So big question, right? Are housing prices sustainable? Housing prices sustainable? Okay, we have seen prices basically skyrocket ever since COVID came. Ever since circuit breaker, prices have gone absolutely nuts. If you were to ask me myself, somebody who is in the market every single day, just 3-4 years back would have expected OCR prices to hit 2,000 PSF. My answer would be no, right? So now that we are at this stage, right, 2,100, 2,200 PSF for OCR, the question I get a lot recently is, are prices sustainable? And you know, we're going to answer that in today's session. But first and foremost, right, I think a very recent piece of news just on Saturday, August 27th, this came out in the Business Times. So we have an institute, right, the Urban Land Institute. They did a survey of the Asia Pacific gateway cities, and they sort of came to, they published their findings, and you can find this on the internet. You can just Google it and you can find it. And surprisingly, the Singapore housing, they have determined Singapore housing to be relatively affordable if compared to the other gateway cities in the Asia Pacific area. Right, part of the article, right, they are saying the Republic has the highest home ownership as well, right, near to 90%. I believe the number is 88.9%, right? And why did they say we are affordable? Is because we have a large majority of housing stock in Singapore, close to 80%. It's made up of HDB flats, which is government subsidized. But for the private property, the median price is about 1.13 million. Right? That said, Singapore non-HDB homes are the most expensive to rent in the region. So rentals in Singapore, and I think if they've taken this data last year, right, they're going to be more shocked about when the data comes out this time around. But you know, why is Singapore homes so expensive to rent, right? If you were to ask me, it boils down to several reasons. First and foremost, we have always been like the article has said, a gateway city to the Asia Pacific. With ASEAN and with Indonesia, the other ASEAN countries really developing very quickly. A lot of tech companies are wanting to penetrate those developing countries, right? They are setting up their hubs over in Singapore, which is bringing in a lot of talent. We've seen that in also a recent news article where the government is coming up with a new initiative to allow high-earning tech folks, right, to come into Singapore first and then look for a job here without having to secure a job, right? Currently, they have to secure a job before they are allowed to come into Singapore. So why do they have to do this? Because of the huge demand for such talent from the companies. But from the talent's perspective, it's also a location whereby they want to shift towards. For somebody who's in the market, and I've shared this many times in our live sessions, our videos, we see a huge shift of talent, of tenants coming in from both China and from Hong Kong, because of some of the geopolitical shifts as well. So all this is, and then next part, you look at this particular article with home ownership at close to 80%, 90% for as stated in the article, and also with the fact that we today have ABSD, there's very little speculative demand in the market. Most people own just one property. Some, right, the more affluent ones can own two, very little own 3, 4, 5, 6. That used to be the case last time, right? Private properties, a lot of them were medium for speculation, and most, you own 6 property, you can't possibly stay in 6. you stay in one and you rent out the other 5. So last time vacancy rates were very high. a lot of the private property stock was for rental, and hence the rental was suppressed. But today, in today's market, vacancy rates are very, very low, and hence rental prices are starting to pick up, right? We have the macro perspective down to the micro perspective on rental supply as well. Okay, so all in all, I expect rental rates in Singapore to remain high for a while. Do I expect it to come down? Part of me is thinking it might, with the TOP of a lot of large developments like Park Esta, Normanton Park, Treasure at Tampines happening within the next 1 year or so. So once those developments TOP, and the people that are currently out renting, moving in and stopping their rentals, I see a chunk of rental demand being put out from the market. So whether or not the incoming rental demand is sufficient to supplement the outgoing demand from the people that are renting while waiting for their TOP, only time will tell. Okay, so I've read through the article in detail so that you guys don't have to, and picked up some of the other things that were mentioned in the article that were not mentioned in this very, very short article. Okay, first and foremost, right, how do we compare to the other cities? So in this first table, right, is the median/average home price to median household income ratios. So what's the price of the house as a function of income? As you can see, private property in Singapore over here, we have 13.3%. Okay, much lesser than Shenzhen, Hangzhou, Hong Kong, obviously, right, lesser than Seoul. But if you can see, not exactly cheap as well. Of course, HDB at 4.5 is one of the cheapest across the board. But for private, not exactly cheap. But next, in the next slide, right, they actually do talk a little bit about how do you make sense of these ratios. Okay. Next part, which is something that I have mentioned also quite a bit in my videos, but I'm glad now we have a table to illustrate this. So remember last year where there was a lot of talk on cooling measures and what are some of the potential cooling measures that may come into play, and I was leaning towards the possibility of a decrease in loan to value. Reason being, I see that happening a lot in the other countries. The other countries have utilized a decrease in loan to value as a way to dampen their property prices. And that all in all works well for the sustainability and the sustainability of the market, because you basically have to down pay more of your property. But of course, the downside would be first-timers would be required to fork out a lot more down payment. So that's the reason why the Urban Land Institute, I believe that's what they are called, put together this table. So in this table, as you can see, Singapore is also classified as one of the countries that is easiest for first-timers, the easiest to own a property. Because of our low down payment requirements, a lot of them always complain, wow, so hard to buy a property, so hard to make a move into property. But sometimes there's a Chinese idiom, right? You 身在福中不知福, right? For those who don't understand Chinese, it's like sometimes when you live in a good place, you don't appreciate it. So let's put things into perspective, okay? Take a look at Hong Kong, where the typical down payment is 40% of the property. And in the whole of Korea, right, the typical down payment is 40% of the property. So you buy a $1 million property, you have to down pay 400,000. Right, and that is the average/median prices of the properties around there. So a young couple, right, and for those cities right, those countries, they don't have affordable housing options. It's very, very hard for the younger generation to purchase their properties without the help of parents, for example. So I think at the very least, Singapore have done a good job in our housing policies. And also at least it's still reasonably easy to buy a property, right? Because of our down payment requirements are not as much as the other countries. That said, right, if property prices continue to rise, what may be one of the potential cooling measures that come in? So if you ask me, weighing up between capital gains versus lowering loan to value, I think the government may lean towards reducing loan to value to halt demand as opposed to capital gains tax, because capital gains will lead to demand destruction and may lead to long-term price decrease, but a loan to value reduction, it helps sustainability, but yet, you know, holds prices back a little bit. And they can do that for private if they notice private prices going up a lot. At least for the first timers, they can still lean towards buying HDBs where they can use the bulk of their CPF as down payment as their first home lah. Okay? So for those of you who are interested to have the full report, right, you can go and just Google it and they have the full report over there. It's quite an easy to read report, but I've already put all the interesting parts over here lah. It's a little bit wordy, but I think it's quite interesting, the whole chunk over here. I'm just probably going to just read it out for you, right? In the study, housing in Singapore is the most affordable with price to income ratio of 4.5 for HDB flats. Okay? As mentioned earlier in the report, right, more than 80% of Singaporeans live in HDB flats. Although the price to income ratio of private homes is high at 13.3, private homes represent less than 20% of all housing stock. Okay, and cater to the wealthy Singaporeans and foreigners. So for those owning private properties, the price to income ratio should be substantially lower than 13.3. Reason being, 13.3 is using the median household income of the country. But later on, I'm going to share with you the actual data. On average, the people that so the median household income in Singapore right now is $9,500. The average income of someone staying in a private property, right? The average household income of somebody staying in a private property, later I will show you, it's closer to 19,000. So if you're looking at that, the price to income ratio of somebody staying in a private property should be substantially lower than that, meaning the private property prices are still affordable for the people that can afford the private properties. Okay? Now, the second part. So that's how we make sense of this 13.3%. Hello, sorry to interrupt. We'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for watching the video and also to share why we do what we do. Is to empower consumers with hard facts and figures, quality research and real-life examples to allow them to make the most informed property decisions. So if you found our videos useful, the only thing we ask for is for you to smash that like and subscribe button so that the YouTube algorithm can push out our videos to more consumers. Thank you, and back to the video. Not percent, this 13.3 price to income ratio, okay? The low cost, the second part, the low cost of HDB units is tied to high priority of the Singapore government has placed on providing affordable housing to its citizens. It's understood that the government owns approximately 90% of all land in Singapore. So amongst all the gateway countries, in Singapore is where the government has the highest intervention in the property market, and we all know that, okay? And this is also one of the points to note when we ask ourselves the question, are we in a bubble? Okay, because as a government with so much control, so much intervention policies into the property market, they cannot allow and they do not allow for bubbles to form. They used to, but ever since 2013, with all the onset of the cooling measures and whatnot, we know the minute property prices come out of whack, cooling measures come. The minute developers get slightly more aggressive with their bids, cooling measure comes into play. So today the government is doing everything they can to avoid going into a bubble lah. And they have all the different control mechanisms. Owning 90% of the land allows them to control on the supply side. With cooling measures, they are able to control on the demand side. So they have levers on both sides of the factors that affect price, demand and supply. Okay? Right? At about $10,000 per square meter, even private residential properties that cater to wealthier households are priced substantially lower than comparable housing in Hong Kong and Tokyo. So sometimes we always complain, right? But later on I will share with you an analogy lah. It's good to zoom out, which is why I like to read articles like that on the Asia Pacific level, even on the international level. It's just so that you can gain some sort of a perspective on a more global level, on a more regional level, as opposed to just looking at the newspaper articles and keep complaining that the prices are very, very high lah. Okay? And the next part is also interesting, which is why I put this whole chunk inside lah, because there's a lot of interesting nuggets, interesting things to learn from here. You see, the next part, right? The policy for redevelopment of existing buildings is considerably lax in Singapore as compared to other countries, right? You can go en bloc 10 years after construction, as long as 80% of them, of the residents agree. I think most of us know that. But what I think a lot of us don't know is that in Hong Kong, you need to be after, you can only go for en bloc after the development crossed 50 years, and in Korea after it crossed 40 years. So what that means, right, is that supply is even more restricted in those countries with all these rules. And in Singapore, they have you can churn the supply a lot easier. Okay. Now next. Yeah, so now let's answer that big question that we have lah, right? Are prices sustainable? And to answer this question again, right, I'm going to break it down into two key questions, right? Number one, are we in a bubble? And number two, are prices affordable, right? Are they sustainable? Equates to are they affordable? Like if they're not affordable, then obviously it's not sustainable. Or if a lot of the transactions and a lot of the prices are held through speculative demand, then of course then it is also not sustainable. So I've broken it down into two parts, right? So answering the first question. So we've actually talked about this already quite a bit in the past few videos, but I think this just one very key data point. I think it's good for all of us to know, to also to share, to be able to tell you that there is very, very little speculation in the market today, right? Of all the transactions, only 2% can be classified as speculative. And how they classify a transaction as speculative if it's bought and sold in a short period of time. Compare this to 31% of all transactions being considered speculative back in 1995. Okay, so with the implementation of seller's stamp duty on residential properties, that has reduced all this speculative demand right down to close to zero at just 2%. So I do not see a bubble forming in the property market. But of course, that's just one part of it, right? A bubble also forms when people are buying properties that they cannot actually afford. So how do we answer that question? Now we look at data, and we get all this data is publicly available either on SingStat or data.gov. That's where I got all this data from. So if you're keen, you can go inside there and take a look. Okay, so what are the data that I use? Number one, the Singapore residential household number stands at 1.39 million at this point in time, and of that percentage, okay, we have 16.5% that stays in condos and 4.9% that stays in landed property. So if I were to wrap these two percentages together, basically is people that do not stay in HDBs lah. The number stands at 21.4%, and if you take 21.4% of 1.39 million, you get about 297,000 households that do not live in HDBs. Okay, so now remember this number, 297,000. Okay, which also means that about 1.09 million households stay in HDBs lah. Okay, now how do we make sense of these numbers, right? So if we were to look at affordability, the median household income in the Singapore household right now stands at $9,520 or as of 2021. Okay, and if I make the assumption of that family then taking a 30-year loan at 75% loan to value, they are able to afford a private property of up to $1.5 million. Okay, so median means right smack in the middle, the upper half and the lower half in equal groups. Median is 9,500. Okay. Now, if you were to look at, but again, median isn't really the best indicator for affordability, especially if you are looking at the private market, because for the private market, at the 50th percentile, to be honest, 9,500 combined household income is really a bit tight for you to consider upgrading. You can, but it may be a bit tight lah. So the people that really do consider the upgrades, let's take a look at their affordability, okay? So the average, right? Not sure whether a lot of you know this. You can even find this figure in SingStat, okay? It's the average income of a family that stays in a 5-room flat or an executive flat. Alright, and that average comes up to $13,000 per month, and at $13,000 per month, you can work out a private purchase price affordability of about $2.13 million. And this is the figure that I quoted just now, 19,000. Okay, so that is the average income of a family that stays in condos, right? And now that affordability then comes up to be $3.2 million. So just remember these figures, okay? Next part, next data point. Okay, so now this table states shows the this table, the name a bit long. Let me read it out to you. Okay, this table is the average monthly household income from work among residents employed households by decile. You want me to repeat that again? Average monthly household income from work among resident employed households by decile. Okay, English, in English, okay, that just means the government takes the whole population and break them down into 10 equal groups, and then out of that 10 equal groups, okay, let's say in the top earning group, they take the average income for that, and for that would be $28,900, as you can see. Then the second highest group, right, that comes out to be about $20,420, right? So it's just different ways to organize data lah. So decile is one of the ways. Okay, so how I interpret this, okay? So you can take a look at the decile from from 7th to 10th. That means there's 1, 2, 3, 4, about 40% of the population makes more than $14,000. And how does that translate into households, right? There's about 556,000 households that can afford a private property of up to $2.32 million. Now, how many, do you remember the figure on how many of them actually stays in condo/landed? Over here, 297. So we actually do have quite a high number of households that can actually afford but have not yet upgraded, right? And their affordability stands at about 2.32 million based off the fact that the average of that percentile makes about 14,000, right? That just that decile, it's not even that percentile, because if we look at the 8th decile, right, which is the top 30%, it gives us 417,000 households, still a larger number than the earlier number, that 297,000 that is currently staying in private properties. Okay, as we go up to the top 20%, it's 278,000 with a affordability of 3.39 million. Okay, so now all these numbers, I think maybe some of you already blur, but let me summarize it for you guys. Singaporeans are very, very well to do. Another article that I have not put inside is the fact that Singapore is going to have the highest percentage of millionaires, right? The recent HSBC survey done, highest percentage of millionaires. More or less, I believe the article is for everywhere in the world, higher than the US, Australia, and things like that. Currently, I think the top ranking is Australia. So income levels are really, really increasing, and at the kind of income levels, a lot of Singaporeans can actually afford to upgrade, can actually afford to stay in HDBs. The current median price of a private property only stands at 1.13 million. The current median price of it, I did not put in that figure. Is it? Yes. It's over here at the bottom part. Over here. I don't think I can draw it. Can I draw? Maybe here I can draw. Oh, I can. Can you see it? Can you see the screen if I'm drawing? Maybe it's a bit laggy. Cannot, huh? Okay. It's okay. Let's... Oh dear. Let me erase that. Give me a minute. Oh, but anyway, it's not shown there, right? On the thing. Huh? Yeah, but you can't see it on the screen, right? Okay. Now can see already, huh? Okay. Right, so you guys can see it, huh? Okay, awesome. Then now can draw already. Yes, so I wanted to show you this figure. 1.13 million is the median household median price for private properties lah. But as you can see, about 500,000 households can afford up to $2.3 million. So I still see quite a fair bit of room to grow, right? In terms of based off the numbers that are currently staying in private properties versus the numbers that can afford, and also the current median prices, right? But I think the current median prices is not very reflective, as you can see with a lot of the new launches nowadays, right? But yes, current median prices versus potential affordability of a large number of the population. So kind of the two data points that I'm looking at to give me the confidence to say I believe the property market still has room to grow. Okay? All right. Let's delete that and go continue. Right, so the analogy that I wanted to give you guys is, why do I pull out all this data, and why did I dive into the Urban Land Institute's research across the board? And if you guys follow our channel enough, you know that we don't of course, we dive a lot into the Singapore property market, but we do give analogies and we do give examples of what's happening abroad as well. Another report that we like to refer to is also the PwC Asia Pacific Real Estate Market Report, just so that we have a sense on where we stand compared to the other countries in the world. Are we like sort of an outlier like where Hong Kong is, or are we below average, at average, right? So at least now we know we are considered affordable as compared to the other countries. So be happy about it, right? The government has done a really good job to ensure affordability by segmenting out the market into public housing, right? Allowing people to buy into it easily, and also for those that manage to get subsidized housing, get a good amount of profit and then utilize that profit together then with your high income to roll into a private property if you want to. Okay, so just a word of advice, right? Never look at things just from your own perspective. Do zoom out, see things on a bigger perspective, right? And for next up, right, what should you do, right? Today we are just only looking at affordability more on the demand side to things, which is something that we don't usually focus that much on our channel. For those who follow us, again, you know we focus a lot more on the supply side, because the supply side factors, the supply side data is a lot easier to predict, right? Because if you don't sell land today, 4 years later, you're not going to get any houses. So today, we already know what the supply is like 4 years from now, making it very, very easy to predict. Demand, again, is not that easy to predict, but yet we use, which is why we use income data such as income, data such as HDB, MOP, that is at least still reasonable to predict, because even if it were to drop, it will not drop by that much, it will not change by that much, okay? Next, right, point number 2, the shifting trends in the Singapore property market, right? Some of the other data that hasn't been talked about is the shrinking household. While the household numbers the resident household numbers are going up, the average size of a household is coming down. I believe it's currently at 3.5 persons per household. And I think the government is expect that to come down even more as we get more singles, people that are not getting married, or those that get married and don't have kids. So what does that mean for the Singapore property market? What segments will benefit from shifting trends like that? But of course, reducing household size, then you may say, hey, but Alvin, you always say buy big OCR properties, go the bigger the better. And doesn't this run contrary to what you have always suggested? Now, then it's also, you have to know how to segment out the demand lah. Okay, where are the singles at? What's the kind of affordability? What are their considerations? Things like that. So there's a bit more detailed. Okay, and the last part, right, understanding the money flow in the Singapore property market. I haven't done a basics webinar in a while. Maybe I'll do that soon. But I think in a couple of videos back, I sort of explained you know, the building blocks of the Singapore property market, from BTO, how the money flows into the property market, what triggers those flows, what affects those flows, right? And what are the things that is affecting this flow at this point in time. So once you understand how the money flows in the Singapore property market, you know where to position your purchases and how to analyze the market. Okay?